what intrigued me about this was if you say, hey, we're not deciding, we're just debating, that gives you freedom. Gives you freedom to explore. We're saying that because you're exploring it. You can play devil's advocate if that's what needs to happen, right? You can look for the gaps. You can look for additional information. You can say, you know what, we actually don't know enough about this and we have time. Let's go explore and then come back. So you're effectively removing the pressure of making a decision. And the purpose of that is making sure that when the time comes, the decision is as good as it can be. I found that very, very intriguing. I used it a couple of times and really calling people, hey, are we deciding today or are we just, and, the just almost looks like it's a diminishing or demeaning, but it isn't, right? It is a really, really important homework. You can say, okay, are we preparing for the decision? Are we setting ourselves right for the decision? Is that what we're doing? Or is it like, we kind of need to know at the end of the day or at the end of the hour, what are we doing here, right? What needs to happen? What is the action that needs to be driven?
Welcome back to CardCast, where Milan and I pick a topic at random from a deck of cards just like this. Let's shuffle the pack and see what pops out today.
Big debate versus big decisions. I think that the term came from, I want to say Kim Scott, but I'm actually not perfectly, sure. The whole idea behind this one is it's a diamond card, right? So it's about value, about using your time effectively. And in this particular case, like how many times do we hear that, okay, we had this meeting and the only outcome of that meeting is agreement that we will have another meeting.
Yeah, which can be annoying. It could be frustrating because we want to get to a decision, don't we?
Well, not necessarily, right? I think that that's the important piece, that not every meeting, not every interaction has the objective of reaching a decision, because we might not be ready for that. The purpose might be to explore options so we can sleep on it and then arrive at the decision later, right? When we were talking about when we had the two card episode, if you remember, that ended up being on haste and hesitation, when we were talking about the right timing of decisions, this is a part of it, right? Like, hey, we know decision needs to be made. We also know we don't need to make it yet. However, that doesn't mean that we don't do anything in the meantime. And one of the things we can do is we can debate, right? That's where the big debate comes, which is, let's bring all the information we have. Let's have a discussion on what we still don't know and what we need to discover. But that is the purpose of us getting together and working, for example, because it might not be that, hey, we have to decide ABC. On the other hand, when we do, when the time comes, it's really good to have an objective and say, hey, no matter what, you're coming out with a decision, right? Because now is the time to have it. All the debate has been had. Everything was done. All the information was already brought forward. There's nothing new entering the picture. All we have to do today is to decide. So it's all about setting the objective of why are we getting together in the first place.
Yeah, this is a new one to me. I'm not familiar with this model, and you know me, I'm a model guy, so I'm intrigued by a new model that I haven't come across. So in effect, you're saying that you need to make it clear up front. Are we debating or are we deciding? And then you keep those two apart, because I mean that's not something I've practiced before. I mean, for me, when I'm working with a leadership team, I want to be very, very clear on what the outcome is, and it is normally a decision. And what you're saying is, well, you've got to separate the two. You've got to have the debate, then take a break, and then make the decision afterwards. And are you actually advocating for separate meetings for the debate and the decision? It sounds like you are.
I think that, it's a different mindset, right? It's a different way of thinking about it. So what intrigued me about this was really because if you say, hey, we're not deciding, we're just debating, that gives you freedom. Gives you freedom to explore, because you're not committing to anything where you're saying, hey, we're saying that because you're exploring it. You can play devil's advocate if that's what needs to happen, right? You can look for the gaps. You can look for, additional information. You can say, you know what, we actually don't know enough about this and we have time. Let's go explore and then come back. So you're effectively removing the pressure of making a decision. And the purpose of that is making sure that when the time comes, the decision is as good as it can be. So I found that very, very intriguing. I used it a couple of times, and really calling people, hey, are we deciding today or are we just, and the just almost looks like it's a diminishing or demeaning, but it isn't, right? It is a really, really important homework. You can say, okay, are we preparing for the decision? Are we setting ourselves right for the decision? Is that what we're doing? Or is it like, we kind of need to know at the end of the day or at the end of the hour, what are we doing here, right? What needs to happen? What is the action that needs to be driven?
So you can bring a different frame of mind to those two different scenarios, can't you? So when you're debating, it's like, okay, let's explore the options. Let's look at what the possibilities are and debate those. The positives and the negatives, the pros, the cons, so that we work it through. We explore all the possible options and ideas and opportunities, and that takes the pressure away. Maybe the pressure of time to actually make a decision. Now, when you separate these two out, are you thinking, okay, let's go and have a coffee and come back, or are you saying, no, you've got to give it a day or a few days before you come back to make the actual decision? What's the continuum of the break?
Depends, right? Like you could do it and say, we actually need to make a decision at the end of the day, but this is not the time. Let's first, have the debate part without trying to do the decision. The other concept that enters this is the concept of advocacy versus inquiry. Which is, are you fighting for a particular outcome or are you figuring out what you actually want to fight for eventually, right? So I think that the intentionality of how you are going to use your brain in that setting for that particular outcome is important because, again, our brains are a complicated things, right? And they like to work in a particular way at a particular time, right? You can be creative or you can be defensive or you can fight or you can flight. You generally cannot do more of those things at the same time. So I think that the whole idea of, okay, let's get in a particular mode, like we talked about this. That's why we do good news in the beginning of the meeting, to put the mind into the right place. Because we're using our consciousness, we're using our brain as a tool, and as such, what setting it up for the best possible outcome and the best possible condition for the job at hand can be really powerful. And for that, first we need to decide what is the job at hand and be as specific about it as possible and say, hey, we're just exploring. Just think about how brainstorming works. You really don't, when you're doing brainstorming, you're throwing ideas on the wall.
Yeah, no
You don't want
decisions.
any
Yeah.
filters, right? It's exactly the same principle. You just think
Yeah.
anything goes, right? Even if you think it's stupid, even if you know it's stupid, you still put it there because that's how your brain might be operating. We'll filter later. We'll cluster later and we'll figure it out later in a different way. Um, Everything goes. And this is the same thing. If you specify, okay, this is the purpose, this is why we're getting together, this is the mindset in which we want to be in order to achieve the best outcome, then you have the freedom to actually do that without all those limitations and thinking about the consequences of the decision because you're not making the decision yet.
Yeah. So if we were to summarize those two different sort of frames of mind, the debate is about bringing everything together, or look at bringing out all the pros and the cons, the advantages, the disadvantages, and then developing that line of thought or that line of exploration amongst all the people in the meeting. And in contrast, the big decision part of it after the gap is about bringing those together so that the people in the room can make a shared decision on the best way forward. Is that about right?
So, to put it very, very simple, when we're having debate, we are exploring or developing options. But when we are in the decision mode, we're committing to a path, we're making a choice. Two very different states of mind, two very different approaches. So separating them in time, even if it's by 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right? Could be very, very beneficial for the quality of that final outcome, which is the decision, which is the choice being made, and which is also for the, Lynch will tell you, for the cohesion of it. Because the debate can be the part when we have the healthy conflict, where we are
Yeah.
figuring out all of those things. But when we are decisioning this, disagree but commit, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, and everybody has been heard, right? And
Yeah.
and sometimes it's more important to be heard than to win,
Yeah.
right? Because
Absolutely. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I said what I
Mm.
needed to say. I'm not being ignored. Yes, the team made the decision that now I am free to commit to, because I was heard. It's not like, if only I was able to say this, maybe the decision would have been different. We want to remove that, and having the debate part gives you the freedom.
But that motion of disagree and commit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the reason you can't have the two in the same meeting is that you're either going to be suppressing debate because you feel pressured to make a decision, or you're not going to be in the right frame of mind to make the right decision if it's done too close to the debate.
But if it's mixed together, I think that too close is a different piece. But the thing is that, okay, so we are deciding this. No, 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 but we should really take this into consideration. Okay, let's go back. Like, think about the altitude change in those conversations. And, you said you're not familiar with the framework, but I'm sure you're familiar with the experience when it goes badly, right? When you have the team constantly switching between the two. It's like, okay, no, we decided. No, we shouldn't have decided because we didn't take this into consideration. Oh, you're right. So maybe we should go that way, right? And then you're using that uh, energy to constantly, like, okay, so are we making a choice and commitment and think about the consequences, or what is actually happening here? So if we can be clear about it up front, hey, this is what we're doing today, this is what the outcome. Like,
This
when
is
we're doing our plannings, right, what do you start with? One question, one objective, right?
mhm,
Why are
mhm.
we here today? What is the outcome? What is it that we're trying to do? It's a similar thing. It's literally just setting up expectations for what's going to come out today, so we can check against it and say, did we achieve that, or is there anything left to do?
This is actually making a lot of sense because I've felt in some of my sessions I've maybe pushed too fast for a decision and kept that decision or made that decision too close to the debate. So maybe I've sort of pushed them to end the debate a little bit early and then not taken a pause between there and the decision. I mean, my line of questioning is often, once they've had the debate, I say, okay, whose decision is this? Who's accountable to make the decision? And I often felt that maybe they're not quite ready to make that decision at that point. Maybe we should have taken a break. Maybe we should
Yeah,
have taken a
and
break.
then the debate can be lively. We can be screaming at each other, and that's good, right? That's awesome. Again, it depends on the cultural mix in the room, but
Yep.
you have people who just love that part of the conflict, but you don't want that conflict as a part of the decision. It can be part of the debate because it's harmless at that point, but and different personalities can show up. But this also allows you to make a decision in a calm and organized manner, because okay, we've finished our debate. Now let's take a methodical break, so everybody chilled fuck down a little bit, right? Now the time is going to be to make a decision. Everything's on the table, so let's do
Mhm.
it. If you go to Decisive, the book, right? Because then there can be a step in between, because you have the debate, or you have the exploration, you have the inquiry part, and then what you do is to decide how to decide, right? What is the method of the decision? You just said that. Who's accountable to making this decision? Is it all of us? Is it the CEO? Is it this person? Like, is it a subset, and we just delegated the decision? Oh, Shannon would kill me for that word, but you know what I mean. Do we entrust
Yeah.
subset of the team with making the decision, because that's their ownership, and all of those things, and we want that, and then maybe we actually don't need to be all in the room or whatever that is, or we say, you know what, The debate was very lively. We have a whole bunch of things. We need to put it on the board and do the pros and cons of the two options. And we need a little more time because, one of those sayings I really love, if you have two options, you don't have options. Right? If you have two options, you do not make a decision, you create a third option first. Right?
Yes.
You look
Yeah.
for others, right? Yes or no questions are very, very limiting. So you want to give yourself the space and the freedom to take that a bit further.
Yeah. You referenced a book there. I didn't quite catch the name. Is that the book on decisions?
Yes. The book is called Decisive.
Decisive. Okay.
Yeah, it's from Chip, and then sorry, you remember The Power of Moments?
Yeah.
Same authors.
Okay. Interesting. And you made a point about Shannon not liking to use the term delegate. And looking at, I think the issue she has is not delegation per se, but making it clear that you're delegating to people who want to take ownership. But that's a separate cat.
Yeah, well, we did have the conversation. It was delegation versus abdication, right? Because I think that when she's talking about, and rightfully hates the term, she's looking at it from the abdication point of view, which, I'm of the school that you can delegate well.
Yeah. You just need to build a team that want to take things off your plate.
Oh, yeah. Jim Collins would give you an A+ for that one.
Yeah. So the key thing here is, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the key thing here is, being very conscious and very, very clear about what we are doing in the meeting. Are we debating or are we deciding? So you actually announce that at the beginning of the meeting. This meeting is about debating. This meeting is about making a decision, having already had the debate. That you're that specific about it. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. When when it comes to big decisions, like let's also be honest, it's all context dependent, right? Like the decision what we're going to have for lunch is probably at a different level than a strategic direction of the company or a major hire or anything like that, right? So you give it the energy it requires within the time frame that is given to you by circumstances, right, or by outside forces. But that's it, and you are being very, very specific. Like, hey, are we deciding? Are we ready to make the decision? Like, those are all valid questions. I think we're ready. No, I don't think we're ready because we are missing this part, right? You learn so much about the dynamics of the team as well if you start just naming things like that, right? Rather than assuming, we should be ready to make a decision now, so let's make it. You see the trend, right?
Yeah. No, I like this model, and I think I can certainly use it. I think there are many situations where you'd want to separate those two things out: those big debates and those big decisions.